Hello and welcome back to the Elite Football Show. My name is Hader and I'm your host. As usual, today we've got something different. Finally, no Man United talk, and I'm delighted about that because it's been a difficult start to the season. So I've got Glen here from the Total Saints pod, one of the best Southampton podcasts out there. They're doing some fantastic stuff. Glen, you were just telling me that you've got an interview coming up with someone quite big. I'm not going to say who, just in case you don't want me to announce that. But you know, you guys are doing some fantastic stuff. So Glen, welcome to the podcast, and how is everything going with you today?
Thank you very much. Yeah, our podcast is going great. It's nice to be on here. Pleasure to meet you. Everything's going okay. I'm down in sunny Southampton. Only it's not sunny. It's absolutely belting down with rain all day. So I've just not looking my best because I've just spent 2 hours getting soaked walking the dogs. So no, I haven't. But football's okay, so happy days.
Absolutely. And then the international break is over. I can't lie to you, I'm not a massive fan of the international break, and it's good to have Premier League football back. Let's just jump straight into it, Glen. And look, Southampton, a side that I've got a bit of a soft spot for. I'm from the south as well. I think you've got a fantastic manager. We'll go on to him later. I'm a massive fan of Hassenhuttl. I think the academy's usually one of the best in England, or even you could argue even around Europe. There's some fantastic talent that you guys bring through. Well-run football club. I think over the last few years, you haven't exactly hit the heights that you did, sort of when you had Pochettino there. You did pretty well under Koeman, but it's looking like you're going in the right direction. So what do you make of Saints' start to the season?
In terms of points that we've got 6 from the 4 games. That was more or less what I expected. I didn't expect them to come in quite the way they have, because we had Palace away first game of the season, and we've won there the last 3 seasons. So I saw, bearing in mind how well we'd done in Project Restart, I thought, and how bad Palace had been, I thought we'll rock up there. That'll be a good chance to get 3 points. We gave away a rubbish goal and then were dismal and lost 1-0. So it was a bit of a bad start. But the game that we always lose is Burnley away, and we managed to go there and win. So that balanced it out. Other games we've had, Spurs at home. I'm of the mind that whenever you play one of the big boys, if you get beat, that's what's expected. And we duly did get beat. Though we did get beat in quite a comical way by conceding the same goal 4 times, or pushing up and letting Kane find Son, and he ran through and scored. Funnily enough, every time. It was just like Groundhog Day. Let's do the same thing again, see what happens. So in between the Palace and the Spurs game, we played Brentford in the Carabao Cup, and we were terrible in that as well and got beat 2-0. So the first 3 games, 3 defeats, awful. We've recovered with the win at Burnley, and we beat West Brom at home. But if you chose 3 teams that were, look nailed on for relegation at the moment, based on current form, Burnley and West Brom would be 2 of them. So we've beaten teams we should beat. 6 points, I think. Bearing in mind, Saints have got a history of terrible starts to the season. 6 points is reasonable, and probably more importantly than the results, we've actually looked like a decent side the last couple of games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you had a very strong finish to last season. I was really impressed. You beat City, I believe, and with Shea Adams with that goal.
Yeah.
But I mean, moving forward to this season, what have Saints done well, and what have you been a bit concerned about? I know it's only a couple of games in, but there are obviously things that you see. I mean, like you said, with Son, Spurs and Kane, as United fan, we got beat 6-1. Same thing happened every single time. I'm just about over that, gun. I'm just over it. I'm going to speak to a Spurs fan this Friday, and I'm ready. It's been a couple of weeks, but I'm ready. But yeah, what is it? Because when I looked at the strike force in particular, something that I think has a lot of potential. You look at Danny Ings was fantastic last season, and deservedly he's got his England call up. He's fit again, which is brilliant to see. Obviously at Liverpool he had a lot of injury problems there. He's looking like one of the best strikers in the league at the moment. Shea Adams is one that came with a lot of promise, I think, and a lot of potential, but he did take a while to settle. He's someone that hasn't really hit the ground running again. Do you think that that's a strike force that can really propel Saints to sort of the top 8 maybe, or even top half of the table? And what's been a bit of a concern? Because, there are a few things that are a bit concerning, I think, as the season's started.
Well, if you'd asked me before the transfer window ended, I'd have been concerned about our squad depth. We've got a decent enough first 11 to challenge most teams, and we don't go into any game and well, usually we don't go into any game and get hammered. We've got a decent enough first 11 to give anybody a game. Of course, occasionally it doesn't work, but so I would have been worried about the squad depth, but we've addressed that in the transfer window a little bit, which I know we're going to get onto later on. The Ings and Adams partnership, it's the first time I've gone into a season thinking we've got two strikers here who can get sort of 10, 15 goals each. Saints have always we've had a history of having one player who can do it and then no one else. I mean, if you go back to sort of, I don't know, 15 years ago, we had like James Beattie would score 25 goals and then the next top scorer would be 5. And we've always been a little bit like that. And because of the way Adams finished the season, he got 4 goals in 7 games. We kind of hoped that he would start scoring goals straight away, but he has had chances, and he's managed to pick out the goalkeeper or the post, or I could be sat here with him having already scored 3 goals this season. So it's not like he's at the start of last season. He did look a little bit rabbit in the headlights, like the step up was going to be a little bit too much. I don't think that's the case now. He knows he can do it. He's been a little bit unlucky at the start of this season, but with the players we've got in the transfer window, he now has a bit more pressure for his place. So hopefully, I mean, the theory is always that bringing in a striker is makes the people in possession have to work a little bit harder. So hopefully it'll work. Things I've been concerned about, apart from the squad depth, we did very well with Project Restart, and I think there was an expectation that it would just roll on, as I said earlier. But Ralph seemed to have changed the tactics a little bit at the start of the season, and we were playing with what looked like a much higher defensive line. And we don't really have the players to do that. We don't have pace at centre-back, especially when Vestergaard plays, because he's like an oil tanker. But he's good.
But he's quicker than Harry Maguire.
I'm quicker than Harry Maguire, and I'm nearly 52. So, so we don't have masses of pace at the back, and we don't have our goalkeeper Alex McCarthy. He's getting better at doing the sweeper keeper thing, but it's not his natural game by any stretch of the imagination. And that Spurs game was a bit of a horror show, and like we famously lost. Saints fans always moan about this being mentioned. We lost 9-0 last year.
Yeah,
it was a bit of a reset. And then, because if you lose 9-0, you can't pretend that everything's all right. You have to do something about it. And I think getting beat 5-2 by Spurs was a little bit of a wake-up call regarding the sort of suicidal high line on the halfway line. So the last couple of games, albeit against weaker teams, Burnley and West Brom, we seem to have settled into a more what I'd call sensible line. So I was a little bit concerned about that, but a few of the clouds of concern have drifted away the last couple of games.
Look, it's a bit of a funny one, isn't it? At the beginning of the season, you look at Liverpool getting beat 7-2, United. Well,
that's funny, wasn't it?
That was honestly. I was recording a podcast after that, and I was very despondent. Did a United podcast, and it was a live show. And as the comments were coming in, I was saying 5-1, 6-1, because I was saying things like, "Oh, United, look, if you get beat." And we will talk about Hassenhuttl later about getting beat 9-0. But if you get beat 6-1 at any club, that's usually getting the sack. And if it's a big club like United, it's getting the sack. Yeah. So I was saying this, and then the comments are flying in, and they were like, "Oh well, Klopp's losing 5-0. Should he get the sack?" And I'm like, "All right, come on, a bit of context. Let's not be silly about it. That's the football fan, isn't it?" But Glenn, let's move on to the summer business. I don't have a list of all the players that you brought in, but I will mention a few of them, and you can run through all of them. But Kyle Walker-Peters has started really, really well.
Yes.
Obviously, that swap with Højbjerg, I think that looks like a good signing. You've signed Diallo, I believe. Is it Ibrahim Diallo, who's very highly rated? I spoke to a French journalist the other day, and he was very complimentary. Is it Salisu as well, the centre-back, I believe?
Yeah, Mohamed Salisu. Yeah. Mohamed Salisu, he's Ghanaian. He was at... I can't remember what he was.
Valladolid or something
Valladolid,
like that.
I think. Yeah. Yes, he was there. And Theo Walcott is the other one. And it's, I mean, you can never, 5 minutes after every transfer window, someone always says, rate your transfer window out of 10. And it's impossible because, especially when you're bringing in players from abroad, and no one's really heard much about them, like Diallo, for example. Who knows? He's got to settle in the country. He's got to get used to the style of football. I don't know whether he speaks English. There's all these things that have to fall into place before, in a year's time, you can look back and say, yeah, that was a good transfer window. All you can say is that we seem to have been recruiting to a plan. We've addressed the issues that needed addressing. Last year we had Cedric, who's now at Arsenal somehow. I say somehow because he's rubbish. So we had Cedric at right back, or we had Jan.
Good agent.
Oh, unbelievable. Or we had Jan Valery, who's a youngster who's more of a wing back than a right back. So he struggled in a flat back four, which is what we play now. So that was the obvious position that needed strengthening. We got Kyle Walker-Peters on loan, a couple of games to kind of get used to it, and he's been excellent. So that was the weakest position in our starting 11, and we got the player to go in there. The next issue was centre halves. We had a couple leave, and we needed to up the quality. Now Salisu they've got very high hopes for him as being the one that's going to be worth a hell of a lot of money in 2 or 3 years' time, which is, like it or not, is our model. We want to bring in players from Europe for between 15 and 20 million quid. Like we did with Mr. Van Dijk and Sadio Mane. That's kind of what we are trying to do with players that we recruit from Europe. So Salisu is thought by the club to be of that caliber. So one of our weak areas last year was centre back, and that we did find a partnership that was decent at the end, but it certainly was the next area. Then we had to replace Højbjerg, and we brought Diallo in, as you mentioned, and our podcast that we did a couple of weeks ago, just before the transfer window closed, someone asked me, where would you recruit next? And we had a player called Sofian Boufal who left, who was always good. He's left now. He was strongly rumoured to be out the door. And they talked about replacing him, but I argued that we needed a striker because we needed someone to put pressure on Shay Adams, because behind Shay Adams we got Shane Long, who everybody loves because he's honest as the day is long, but he's not really a goal threat at all. He does his bits and pieces and pressurises defenders, but it's not a high quality striking option. And then Theo Walcott came on the last day, so he kind of fills the winger and striker. He can do both. And whilst it was a surprise because we had this policy of only recruiting players under the age of 24, with Walcott being 31, but I think it was a case of he obviously had a history with the club. He clearly wanted to come back, judging by the fact he's sort of let go some of the bonuses he was due from Everton in order to be able to sign. And we got rid of enough deadwood to be able to sort of subsidise the wages. And Everton are paying half. So it's kind of like it became a bit of a no-brainer, a no-lose situation with him. So hopefully it goes well. But it's been interesting. The club have been massively pushing the homecoming hero thing, which has worn a bit thin because he only played about 20 games. And as soon as he was old enough to start shaving, he was packed off to Arsenal. Well, it's quite funny because my son is 16. And he was 1 when Theo Walcott left, which is just crazy. It's ridiculous, isn't it? So
it feels like he's been around forever, doesn't it? I mean, the whole. I mean, what was he? 16 when he moved to Arsenal, wasn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. I mean,
that was right. Because he wouldn't. He was due to sign his first at the time. Your first professional contract was when you were 17, and he indicated that he wasn't going to sign it, basically. So. So he did definitely move when he was 16. So, but yeah, that's a long time ago.
I was listening to a podcast. I mean, you probably might listen to it, the Peter Crouch podcast, and he was on it the other day. And he seems like a very, I mean, I don't know how much, you probably know a lot more than me, but from my impression of Theo Walcott is someone who, he seems like a really decent person. He seems very grounded, down to earth. I think the issue with him is that he got caught up to the World Cup squad at 16.
Yeah,
and he was saying that he was there. It's ridiculous, isn't it? He had like a camcorder. He said he was going around with a camcorder, like filming the players when he was there. And to be honest, you putting that much pressure on someone. Yeah. I mean, would you say his career has been a success because he's been built up like Wayne Rooney was? I mean, he's never really hit those heights. But was he ever that good? I mean, you remember him in the academy. Was he as good as like Gareth Bale Oxlade-Chamberlain, these sort of players?
He was at academy level. He was better than Gareth Bale. He was the one that was talked about as being the English Lionel Messi or whatever. I mean, we are notorious in this country for hyping players on the back of a couple of good performances in the FA Youth Cup. You know, he's suddenly the next this or the next that, and they did the same with Rooney, and Rooney obviously had a pretty stellar career. With Walcott, we were we were in the Championship at the time, and we were holed beneath the waterline financially already. So I remember him getting in the team. It was Harry Redknapp of all people who gave him his debut. And I remember watching the guy for about 10 minutes. He come on as a sub, I think, in his first game at St Mary's, and within 10 minutes, it's like we ain't gonna have him for very long. So it was that obvious that he was that good. And he was always going to go, once the contract thing sort of came up at the end of I can't remember what it was. I think it was around about Christmas time. He was always going to be gone. Gareth Bale was slightly different because he'd missed a lot of youth football, I think, through injury. So no one really knew much about him until he turned up on the team sheet for the first game of the season, playing at left back, scored a free kick in his first game, and it's like, how's this 17-year-old even got the confidence to take a free kick ahead of all the experienced players? And puts it in the top corner, and you think, oh, we got another one here. And that season we got to the promotion playoffs, and we lost, and so that was the end. That was the end of him. But I think people forget with Bale that he really struggled for 3 years, the first 3 years at Spurs,
really badly.
He's won, along with Walcott, along with Oxlade-Chamberlain, and some lesser players like Callum Chambers, Luke Shaw as well. Obviously, he's at United. I always felt like those guys could have done with another couple of years playing for us in the Championship or League One or wherever we were at the time, or the lower end of the Premier League. I think those players would all have benefited at that time. But obviously, in Bale's case, he turned into a superstar at Real Madrid, and but Walcott, I think because the hype was massive at the start, I think there's a tendency to sort of undervalue what he actually has achieved. He scored a lot of goals for Arsenal, played a lot of games over the last year, 2.5 years for Everton. He's played sort of over 70 games. So whilst he may never, 40 odd caps for England. So whilst he never sort of like turned into an absolute superstar at international level and scored 50 goals or whatever, I think there's a danger because of the hype that there was about him at the start to underestimate what he actually has achieved. And it's I was quite cynical about signing him at the start, but now I'm sort of like quite excited about it, and it'll be nice to see him back.
Yeah, you make some fantastic points when you actually reel those players off. I mean, developing them and how much, I suppose some of them have gone for how far they've gone in their career. Look at Gareth Bale, obviously he's won so much. But Luke Shaw, while I've got you here, I'm a United fan. Luke Shaw. Okay, so Luke Shaw, right.
I find it quite sad, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Okay, so at Southampton, fantastic. Burst on the scene. He looked like he's going to be the best left back around. That's how good he looked. Yep. Joined Man United. It's been a rocky time at United, obviously chopping and changing the managers. Louis van Gaal, in the season where he starts, I think it's his first season, starts so well, Luke Shaw, firing, best player in the team, darting forward, very direct, great end product. Then, bang, shocking leg break. I mean, we can go on and on about it. He nearly lost his leg. Shocking leg break. And United's season actually derailed after that. There was a lot of things that happened. Obviously, Van Gaal was a bit of a nutter and the football was rubbish, but, he was entertainment. So it's fun. It was fun to laugh about it now. But, when you have a first shot on target, or first shot, in fact, after 60 minutes, people falling asleep at Old Trafford when I used to go, it was not good times. But terrible injury. There's a mental toll to that people don't really associate. Yeah. Come back and he's lost that yard of pace. I wouldn't say he's overweight. I always see these horrible jibes at him saying he's fat, he's this, he's that. He's obviously like in the Wayne Rooney build. He's obviously not fat. I mean, he just looks a little bit more bulky, but he's never hit the heights, Glenn, at all. He's had actually his best football, I would say, after the restart. Probably since his injury, he's looked much more direct. He's making those runs. He's very key to our system, but he's just not, for me, going to make be good enough to be, let's say, a title-winning left back. And it's really sad because, I mean, how highly was he rated when he was at Saints? And it's sad, isn't it, to see what's happened?
Yeah. He was massively highly rated because people were looking for the next superstar out of the Southampton Academy, and he was the chosen one. He got in the team when he was 17. I think it was our first season back in the Premier League, so we'd struggled a little bit for a few games. He came in and he made a massive difference. He was really good straight away. And this goes into my point about leaving too soon, because we always thought he's a very good defensive left back, but going forward it needed work because there was no assists, no goals or anything like that. He'd get in a position and then put it in the crowd or whatever, or skid it across the box. And it's just something that he needed to learn. The trouble is that when you get transferred for 25 million quid or whatever it was to a club like Man United, and they're not alone with this, they're not buying potential. They want the finished product. And I don't think there's enough emphasis on the bigger clubs at actually helping players and helping them sort of like work through. Now, Luke Shaw was well known for not being the sharpest tool in the box as well. And through sort of like friends of friends, acquaintances around the area, apparently he really struggled with sort of just the basics of leaving home when he was 17, 18 or whatever, which can happen. Yeah, no, I've got sympathy with that. Not everyone's born with the
streetwise sort of edge, isn't it?
Being able to handle that sort of stuff. And likewise the injury. I mean, I don't know how old he was when that happened to him, but if you compare how he's sort of possibly struggled since then to someone like Danny Ings, who's had 2 horrendous injuries, basically missed 2 seasons, but now he's come back and he's playing the best he's ever played. Shaw just looks like he doesn't look like he's enjoying his football to me at all. Every time I've seen United play, he never really looks like he's enjoying it. And that game you lost to Spurs when he hacked that guy down when he was clean through, that was
a red, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but it almost looked like a cry for help. It was almost like, I don't want to be here, get me off the pitch. It was that bad. You don't see that sort of tackle and it not be on a park on a Sunday morning. That was dreadful. And that to me said everything. And I think, to be honest, for the player needs to get away from Man United. And I'm not slaughtering Man United, but I think he could do with going to a mid-table club and just playing. And because to me, he doesn't look like he's enjoying his football. Maybe it's unfair, but it's quite a shame to sort of like, for me. How old is he now, by the way?
Oh, he's still what, 23, 24?
Is that old?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's because he moved to United at 18. I mean, I remember when we signed him, he was very, very highly rated. I was a massive fan from what I saw at Southampton, but I do agree. And the problem is, look, back in the day when Sir Alex was there, the team was settled. It was a team of winners. So when a young player came in, they got time to develop. It was okay. Yeah. But now, any young player that wants to go to Man United, maybe it's changed a little bit actually, because United have bought a few younger players this season, and Solskjaer's trying to bring that. Like, there's other things about Solskjaer that I'm not a fan of, but what he is doing, and I actually want to talk to you about Pochettino after we talk about, because we talk about Deeney and then. Oh, yeah. But I'm a big Poch fan. But look, there are certain things. But something Ollie has done is actually some of the young players have developed there. So you look at Mason Greenwood; he looks fantastic. Yep. Brandon Williams is playing. We've signed young Palestri as well. It's young Uruguayan who looks like he's going to play a bit more. Dan James has struggled a bit, but generally the younger players have come in and played. But
players, United seem to have done well with players that they brought through. Like you mentioned, Greenwood. Exactly. He's probably been at United since he was 7 or something, and he's come through and he's been brought up in their ways of doing things. It probably doesn't faze him playing for a massive club because he's been there his whole life. I think the problem comes is when they buy in youngsters like Shaw, like Dan James. It's you can argue whether they're actually good enough, but I think there's more of a chance of it being derailed simply because of the scale of Man United.
Fantastic point. And when I look at Shaw, I do agree with you. When I look at him, I think one, you're just not the same player anymore. He's lost something about him. Maybe there's something there that he's maybe not going in fully into tackles. It's very possible that is the case, thinking about the mental effects of what has happened. But I think more to do with the fact he's lost that yard of pace. the guy behind him, Maguire, is slow as anything, as you said. You're quicker than him.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot. Think about it. When you have to think about the guy behind you, you're not going to be darting out towards and covering the flank. But I do think, look, a question here. I mean, just devil's advocate. Luke Shaw comes on the market. Let's take away his wages, because another problem, he's the highest paid fullback in the world, Glenn. In the world.
Yeah.
And this is a problem at United. But look, let's focus on the player. Say he comes on the market, because United have bought a new left back in Alex Telles. Looks like he'll take his spot, unless you go to back three. Because Shaw's look good in the back three, I'll be honest, on the left of a back three. But would you be, let's say he came on the market, would you take him back at Saints?
I don't know. I mean, funnily enough, the fullback that we bought to replace him is still there. It's Ryan Bertrand, who has been consistently in our top 2 or 3 players for the last however many years it is. It's probably about 8 years now, 7 years. So he's 31 now. So he's out of contract at the end of this year. So I don't know whether he's going to sign. The rumor mill says that he's happy to commit to another 2 or 3 years. I think he's missed. There were rumors of him going to Man City a while ago and to Chelsea, but I think that ship has probably sailed now because he's 31. As has playing for England, which is ridiculous because I still think he's certainly one of the top 2 left backs in the country. But Southgate doesn't seem to like him anymore, so he'd rather play Kieran Trippier at left back.
It's a joke, isn't it?
Yeah, I know that's a bit strange, but will we take Luke Shaw back? Yeah, the wages are an issue. I mean, we talked about there's such a disparity in money now between what the big boys pay and what the rest of us pay that it is very difficult to take a player who's been a first team player at a Man United or at an Arsenal. The only reason we've been able to afford to take Walcott is because Everton are paying half his wages. And I know Everton is changing there because of the money that's come into the club, but it's pretty soon they're going to be paying the super wages if they're not already. I mean, I don't know what they're paying James Rodriguez, for example.
Crazy money.
But I mean, but is that in the league of what Man United are paying Pogba or what they paid Alexis Sanchez or I don't know. So, I mean, it's funny. Last year, I was beginning to think that Man United were like a bigger version of Saints in that you've signed a load of players on huge money. And this is a problem that we've had. We've been hamstrung in the transfer market the last sort of like 3 years because we signed a lot of players who, for us, were on a lot of money, who just didn't do it, and then we couldn't give them away. So we similar to like you guys have with Alexis Sanchez. You just if you've bought a player and he's on 350 grand a week or whatever, and suddenly you're saying we don't want him, we need to get rid of him. Suddenly there's not a lot of takers on that amount of money, 100%. So you end up having to pay money just to get rid of the guy, and it's a bad situation to be in. So
that's it. That's exactly what is happening at United. I actually want to drill into that a little bit more. I mean, I don't know enough about Saints, and that's why we've got you here, Glenn. Obviously, for the listeners. Before I go on to the question, I'm going to be shameless, Glenn. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button to all the listeners, because this is on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe as well to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's Elite Football Show. You should be able to find it there if you prefer not to see my face every single week. But Glenn, we talk about those problems because Man United have a massive problem where obviously players are coming in on massive wages. Whoever decided to give Phil Jones 75k a week, no one's going to take him up. Look, honestly, it makes me so angry. I'm calm about that situation now. Like, I don't want to talk about it. But let's talk about Saints, because you had a few years. Like, we can talk about Pochettino in this as well, because I want to know your opinion on him. But you had a fantastic few years. You're up there, challenging the top 6, and then suddenly it just all sort of fell off, and a couple of bad management decisions. So what really happened there?
Well, if you go back to 2010, club nearly went bust. 2009 actually, and we got taken over by Markus Lieber, who was a Swiss German industrialist, but the guy who was running the club was a guy called Nicola Cortese. And Cortese was fiercely ambitious, and he started saying silly things about like something's going to be in the Champions League in 7-8 years or whatever. And for old and cynical people like me, we were like, yeah, whatever, mate, get on with it. We were in League One at the time, 10 points behind everyone else before the season even started. But So in League One terms, it wasn't going to take long to get out of League One. Took a couple of seasons, got promoted from the Championship straight away. Ended up in the Premier League. Now Nigel Adkins was our manager, and he'd overseen sort of like the 2 promotions, but. And he went into the Premier League, and we were doing okay. We were about 14th around Christmas, something like that.
I remember, Glenn, I remember the day he got sacked.
Yeah. And
I was like, why have they sacked him? Because you were doing really well. Ricky Lambert was playing really well.
Yeah. So we sacked him, and everyone was like, what? I think we'd just gone to Chelsea and got a draw, from being 2-0 down. So, it's not as if the players weren't playing for him. We were doing really well. And Pochettino comes in, doesn't speak a word of English. And it's like, Cortese, Cortese was like, he's a little guy, Italian guy.
Yeah.
And you could imagine him being in the mafia. I'm probably slandering. That's probably slanderous. I probably shouldn't have said that. But he was.
That's brilliant. Don't worry, that won't be the short clip that goes out. We'll choose something else when we promote this tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe. But he. So he just handed this guy to us on a plate, and it was like, who's this? We knew Pochettino. We all remembered him from bringing down Michael Owen in the World Cup. That was it.
Yeah.
And when he had long hair, and it's just like, who is this guy? And he did his press conference, and he didn't speak any English, and he was there on his own with an interpreter. Cortese wasn't there, and it's like, bloody hell, they've just thrown this guy to the wolves. But of course, it was brilliant straight away. Obviously the players' fitness changed. The way we played. It was the first time we'd had a team that really sort of pressed from the front. And it was great. And we finished that season relatively strongly. And the next season was Pochettino's first season in charge, and fully. And it was, and we were great pretty much all season. We tanked the cup competitions, which was annoying because he seemed to value an 8th place finish more than the FA Cup. We had a very winnable, I think it was a quarter final against Sunderland. And he rested players, and we got beat.
That mirrors his time at Spurs, doesn't it? Massively.
Yeah, it was like bang. You don't do. I mean, we're not used to semi-finals and finals and stuff. So to actually be within sight of one and then tank it basically was just that wasn't good. And then towards the end of that season, Cortese suddenly got sacked. He got sacked by the owners because he was basically writing checks that they would have to pay. And so there was a bit of an issue there. So Cortese left. Pochettino finished the season because he was Cortese's man. He left as well. Went to Spurs. Now at the time, we were used to getting things taken from us by Spurs. Still happens to this day, but at that time it was like, oh, that's not good. And I remember a bit I wrote for my own blog where Spurs at that time were going through managers about one a year. If you didn't improve on last year's 6th place finish, then you were gone, sort of thing. So
post Harry Redknapp era, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and all those 11 players, and you had, who was it? Was it AVB like this with all these duds?
And it's like, you're going to go to Spurs, you're going to fail, and we're going to be laughing at you. And of course, that didn't happen at all. And he did really well. So up to a point. Didn't win anything. That's the key, and that's until it's all very well sort of developing the club and making the players fitter and playing a certain way, but until you start winning stuff, that perception of you is still going to be there that you're just another manager. I mean, Klopp had this hanging around him until they won the Champions League, and they've won the league now. And it's like, it's all very well being a nearly man. To be a truly great manager at a big club, you've got to win some silverware. And
do you see Poch? See, this is something that I debate a lot with United fans. They talk about this nearly man thing. I mean, they say that, but then we have a manager who also doesn't have a sparkling CV. But when you look at Pochettino, from what you saw, from the day that he walked in through the door, and he had a fantastic season when he was there at Saints, went to Spurs, a club again which I would say, they didn't win anything, but still slowly they are.
Yeah.
They're now in the European Cup. European.
He got more.
Team.
He got more out of Spurs than any manager that I remember. And I go back to. I remember Spurs winning FA Cups in the 80s. I think was it Terry Venables was their manager then, maybe?
Yeah.
But it's a long time ago. I mean, certainly he's got them closer to challenging for the league. That season that Leicester won it, that's the closest I remember Spurs ever getting to actually challenging for a league title. So he definitely did more with Spurs than any other manager has done. So watch this space on Mr. Mourinho this season, because I think they're going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, let's move on back to Saints. I mean, last question on Poch. Do you think he would succeed at a club like United? Has he got what it takes to take? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. I mean, United needs someone to sort of grab the whole club and bring it forward, and that's the sort of thing that he would do. I mean, it's not really my place to talk about Ollie, but he's a fraud. Basically, he's just not there. It's just there's just nothing. There's nothing there. It's ridiculous that he got the job in the first place, and he's, the good run of results against duff teams that he went on, that kind of papered over the cracks a little bit. But I think now it's just too big a job for him. He's just not the right personality. I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere, but what had he done? He won the league in Norway and got relegated with Cardiff. And I mean, how on earth is that the CV to get a job at Manchester United? I don't get it. Pochettino, if he came in, he would have to win something. There's no question about that. But you tried the serial winner with Mourinho, and that didn't work out for some reason.
The club legends. So now maybe in between. The young up and coming manager obviously has a good track record in the league. I mean, like this segues nicely. Let me ask you quickly as well. We were talking about strikers earlier. Troy Deeney been linked heavily. I sent this over to Ben yesterday. Ben's like, why Deeney? And then he's like, oh no, I've had a look. Actually, Deeney has been linked. But obviously you're saying Che Adams and Danny Ings.
Yeah.
Different sort of striker to Deeney. I actually quite like Deeney. I think he's a bit of a brute, isn't he? And sometimes you need to go sort of maybe a bit of a plan B when plan A isn't working. But is that a move that excites you if it happens?
No. No. I think this is agent talk, to be honest, because I said earlier on about us only signing young players, and we signed Walcott. Apparently, the first question that Ralph asked about Walcott was how open is he to sort of like new ideas and learning new stuff and stuff like that? Because at 31, it's going to be potentially more of an issue than a player at 21. But Walcott being the sort of fine, upstanding chap, which he seems to be, they decided that was fine. Troy Deeney's not like that. He's a massive character. I like the guy, don't get me wrong. And 2 or 3 years ago, I'd have thought, yeah, that's great. If you go back to Saints' decent sides that we were talking about earlier on, we had Ricky Lambert as the focal point of the attack, or we had Graziano Pella as they were the main man, typical, old-fashioned centre forwards, led the line. And
Pella was fun, wasn't he, Glenn? I enjoyed it when he was in.
He's fantastic, fantastic player. Not really appreciated at the time, but he was appreciated when we tried to replace him with Charlie Bloody Austin. It's just like,
there's a lot about Charlie Austin. He's less said the better.
He did score the winner at Man United though, so that was good. No, but we until Danny Ings last season, we struggled with attacking play without playing with a big centre forward. We really did struggle with it, and our woeful home form is well documented. And in my opinion, a lot of that is not having, we're trying to pick passes around the edges of defences, and when defences sit deep, we really struggle to break them down. We seem to be getting better at it now, but. It was a lot easier when we could lob the ball into the mixer a little bit on occasions and have someone sort of hold it up and create a bit of havoc. So Troy Deeney would do that, but I don't think he's for us at this moment in time. I think if Che Adams is struggling with goals, I think they're more likely to, stick Walcott up front or go that route. So yeah, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I'd have said yes, but I don't think so now, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And with Walcott coming in, and I think that maybe does shut the door. But let's move on. 2 more topics. We're going to talk about the manager, Ralph.
Yeah.
So came to the Premier League, obviously at Leipzig. I actually watched quite a lot of German football, and look, you know, wherever he goes, there's that style of play. It's very high intensity, high pressing. You know, he usually plays like sort of 4-2-4, but what I have been very impressed with him, I did a podcast months ago, probably last year, about him, and what I'm very impressed with him is that he's got that system, and it doesn't, obviously you need the players, like you said, he plays more of a higher line, he does need pace, but what I'm impressed about him is that he improves players who some people think aren't necessarily top bracket, and he brings them up to a level, very much like Klopp. You know, he has a system and it works. Maybe you can disagree with that because obviously I'm looking from the outside, but when you're looking at what he's done at Saints, would you say he's been a success? And obviously you saw the 9-0 defeat. Were there calls for him to get sacked after that defeat?
I think that there's always calls for people to get sacked when you get smacked by that many. That particular game was, I mean, it was funny by the end. It was just, I mean, I sat there. I've got the little badge of honour. I sat there for 93 minutes or whatever it was and watched it. I saw Jamie Vardy score the 9th and celebrate in front of about 20 of our fans. Yeah. It's fair enough because we've been giving him pelters about his misses all game. But so I've got no problem with players giving some back. That was fine.
Yeah.
So were there calls? There weren't too many calls for him to get sacked because I think people recognised the bigger problem was the players that we had. I think the attitude was there's only so much a coach or a manager can do. Once the players cross the white line, it's up to them, and they, half of them clearly couldn't be bothered. Ralph, yeah, he's got this. He describes his formation as 4-2-2-2, and it's quite an important distinction because it's the sort of two wide players, if you like. He calls them number 10s, so they play infield, they swap sides, they're very much involved in the pressing from the front. So the way he explains it, it's like 4 lines rather than 4-4-2.
Okay, so it's like 4, then the 2 defensive midfielders, the 2 attacking, and then the 2 up top.
Yeah, that's correct. He didn't try and give us that style of play straight away, and I think if you asked him now, I think he'd regret that. And because at the start of last season we were playing sort of like 3 centre backs, and that kind of continued until that Leicester game. Now the Leicester game was a bit of a freak because Ryan Bertrand got sent off, but after 10 minutes. But make no mistake, we were going to get hammered that game anyway because the opening 10 minutes was just one of those games where you're watching it thinking, "Oh my God, how many are we going to get beat here?" Leicester were brilliant; they were all over us, and then the red card, and then people giving up. It was just a horrible experience. So straight after that, we had 2 games against Manchester City, just what you want. And we just defended the crap out of it basically and got 2 narrow defeats. And I think then there was an international break, and it was during that international break that he kind of said, right, it was almost like being hung for a sheep as a lamb sort of thing, the old phrase where he just said, well, okay, if I'm going to get sacked, I'm going to do it my way. So from that moment on, he sort of picked the players that he thought would work best as a flat back 4, because that's key. The reason we played 3 at the back is because he didn't trust any of the centre backs. You know, none of them were good enough to form a pair. But he got Jack Stevens, who was 5th choice at the time, I think, and paired him with Jan Bednarek. And the 2 of them, whilst not being fantastic, they were good enough to be able to play this formation. Finally finding a position for James Ward-Prowse was huge as well, because he settled into the middle 2 with Højbjerg and Stuart Armstrong. It was a sort of journeyman signing really from Celtic, £7 million, nothing special, but he'd always played as a sort of central midfielder, hadn't really torn up any trees. And suddenly he's deployed on the right hand side and he's drifting in and out and he's been great. So yeah, certain players have got a lot better, as you said. But I think just sticking with the original principles that he had, you know, Ralph does like to tinker a little bit. Last season we had a few. He seemed to like playing fullbacks at a position. You know, we had midfielders playing there and right footers on the left and left footers on the right. And I think all that's illustrated to anybody is that in the modern game, having fullbacks that go up and down and can do everything and cross the ball with their left foot if they're a left back is is kind of key. Otherwise, it all kind of goes wrong. Which, feeding back to Man United, I think that's part of your problem because your fullbacks don't offer anything going forward. But but Ralph, he once he stops messing around and just sticks to what we're good at, then he's a very good manager. We had Ronald Koeman, and then we had 3 crap ones, and now we got him, and it's I hope he does really well, and if he does really well, then we'll probably lose him, but that's okay. That's okay. I'd rather, we live in the here and now. He signed a 4-year contract, so he obviously sees it's a project worth persevering with for those 4 years, and who knows? Once we stop, once we get all the remaining deadwood off the books, and he can really build his own, fill the squad with players that he is happy with, then who knows how good we can be? But that's the dream anyway. It just be nice not struggling.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, I'm a massive fan of him. I think he's definitely up there in the top 10 managers in the league, and he's got and tactically I think he's one of the best. Something that stood out to me is after the restart, Saints are one of the best sides. Obviously, United were fantastic as well, but the day that, and I say this all the time on my own podcast, the day that Southampton rocked up to town and pressed United high up the pitch, pressed Pogba, pressed those second to backs. Remember the 2-2 draw when Obafemi scored in the last minute? Oh God, terrible. But for you, it's great. For me, it's terrible. But the day that happened, every single side realised, right, go and press United up high, and that's it. And he's the first one that did that, and that to me shows United were on fire. You remember how good they were after the
Yeah.
Even from the turn of the year, United were, from turn of the year to the end of the season, they had the most points, more than Liverpool, more than City. Then that shows to me how Ralph's got something there, because nobody else really knew how to play against United. And we were beating teams 3-4, 5-0. But the day that he walked in and to Old Trafford and did that, and that's made it so much more difficult for United. So I hold him in really high esteem. I think he could be fantastic. But again, it depends, doesn't it? If they invest properly, if the club invests properly and give him who he wants, then he can only do with what he's got in the squad, can't he?
He seems to get on very well with the chief exec, a guy called Martin Semmens, who we had on Total Science podcast actually not so long ago. They seem to have a very sort of like good relationship. Semmens stood by him when we lost 9-0. And I think that's gone a long way to him sort of like signing a new contract this season. And I think that, the players that we've bought in, they, as I say, we seem to have been recruiting to a plan, and it's Ralph's plan. He is the main football man. We don't have a director of football. They seem to totally trust Ralph and his judgment. Now, on the one hand, that could be seen as quite dangerous. If he leaves, will we then be up a creek without a paddle? But there's obviously this trust between them that that this is the way to go and this is working. But that Man United game was interesting because at the time, as you say, United were playing really well, and it was all about United's front three, and Mason Greenwood in particular was making waves at that time. And one thing Ralph did very well tactically that game is that our left side was Bertrand and Redmond. He played Redmond 10 yards further infield. So that meant Wan-Bissaka was playing more infield as well. And that meant Bertrand was basically doing all the width and driving Greenwood backwards. So Greenwood spent the whole game chasing Bertrand back up the wing. Didn't do
something he doesn't do very well.
Didn't do a thing. Yeah. And he's a kid. He's not going to have the whole game sorted yet. But it was interesting that Greenwood spent the whole game going backwards, and he didn't do anything that game and got substituted, I think. So that was just a little subtle tactical thing, just moving Redmond in forward, Redmond in field, that made a huge difference. And the high press was very in evident that game, and it really worked. And I know we nicked a draw in the last minute, but I think overall, I think we should have won. I thought we were a better team that day, and we should have won. But there you go. We'll take a point at Old Trafford anytime.
I think, to be honest, you should be expecting 3 at the moment, the way things are going. But look, Glenn, last question.
Yeah, go on.
Only a couple of minutes. Expectations for the season. I said at the beginning of the season, I tweeted out on the day while I was watching the Palace versus Saints game, Saints are going to be my dark horses. Straight away after that, Zaha scored. But and it's sort of
it's your fault
for that. But yeah. So where do you expect? I mean, I'm going to say it'd be nice to see Saints go far in the cup, any of the cups.
Yeah,
that would be nice, wouldn't it? But I think, look, I think they'll finish in the top half. I'm going to say 9th.
Yeah. At the start of the season, we were all drunk on Project Restart, and we thought we're going to do really well this year and finish 7th. And then Everton signed all those players, and we were like, maybe 8th, maybe 8th. And then we lost the first 2 games, and it's like, okay, maybe it's going to be another season of struggle. Now, I don't think it will be. It would be nice to have a season where we're not flirting with it at all. Where we're kind of maybe like Sheffield United were last year, where they're sort of 8th. I know they fell away a little bit at the end, but sort of just that sort of season where we're in the top half for pretty much all the season. That would suit me. As for finishing position, looking at some of the teams outside the top 6 who are quite outside the big 6 rather, who were quite strong, I reckon 9th or 10th would represent a decent season. One thing that Martin Semmens, the CEO, did point out to us is that it's quite important for a club like Saints to not be looking over their shoulder at getting relegated towards the end of the season, because it enables you to plan properly for transfer windows and the following season. And that's something I've not really thought about. Because if you only stay up by the skin of your teeth on the last day of the season, then you've got a lot less time to get everything in a row for next season. And teams like Saints, because we can't afford to throw massive money at things, we need to be organised, and we need to try and do things right rather than take a chance on things. Obviously, there's always an element of chance with any player you sign or manager you appoint or whatever, but we need to give ourselves the best chance, and the best chance for us is giving us as much time as possible and not being near the bottom of the league at the end. Yeah,
that's a great point. I completely agree with that, Glenn. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Honestly, it's the first time.
No worries. Thanks very much.
It's been. I was expecting it to be half an hour, but I could have spoken for another half an hour probably.
Sorry if I banged on a little bit.
No, absolutely. It's just really interesting because, as you said earlier, I know United are a massive club, but there are some similarities, and obviously if Pochettino joins, I mean, it's fantastic. But Glenn, tell all the listeners where they can find Total Saints podcast and where they can find you on Twitter, because that's important as well.
Well, my Twitter handle is at L1-10, because my blog is called League 1-10, which is where we were when I started writing it. So we just been deducted 10 points for not having very much money and having a negative amount of money, and we were started League 1 on -10 points. So I started that then. So my blog is League 1-10. I'm a regular contributor on Total Saints podcast, which is on Twitter. I can't remember what the handle is off the top of my head, but just look for Total Saints podcast, and we're all over it. I think, and that's going from strength to strength. We seem to get a lot of very good feedback about it. We were on the point of closing down at the end of last season because time constraints for other people involved, and we kind of announced we were closing down, and we just this outpouring of love and support. So we found a way to carry on this year, and we're getting some support from the club, and they're putting up to people to be interviewed. So it's all cool stuff at the moment. So yeah, if you're interested in hearing people like me rabbit on rubbish about Saints, then Total Saints podcast is the place to go.
Absolutely. What we'll do for you, Glenn, is we'll put it in the description, and obviously when we post it out tomorrow, we'll tag the handle. Glenn, thank you very much for your time, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And to all the listeners, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be moving away from a lot of the United content. We did a lot of that. Moving to a few more of the other Premier League teams because I'm bored about talking about United, if I'm being honest with you. So make sure. Yeah, I know. It's not going too well. You never know. But we could have Pochettino at the helm. So when we do, Glenn, you're coming back on and we're going to do a little quick Pochettino special.
No worries.
But yeah, make sure you hit the like button, hit